Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know by now, because we're closing toward the end of our 24th year, I interview poets and sometimes other brands of artists about their craft, what they're working on now, what they've accomplished in the past, what they're planning for the future. It's not just poets, it's journalists, it's novelists, all kinds of writers, and we've even had people like actors and sculptors and musicians and all sorts of talented artistic people on the show. It's a pretty wide net. So if you have ideas for the Writer's Block or a suggestion about someone who might be good for the show, watch for our address at the end of the program. We'd be glad to get your ideas and maybe invite some of your suggestions to be on the show. I also want to remind you that Cape Ann TV is very proud of this production and all of our other productions. It's a process made possible by cable access television. You don't get it with Dish. So remember that when you're watching that next Dish commercial. Resist, because you want to be part of this wonderful community effort. Tonight, I'm happy to say we do have a poet, a lady who was here some years ago with an earlier book of poetry, and she has now brought out another book called Barn Sour, which we'll be talking about. Her name is Kate McCann, and she teaches poetry right now and American literature at Eastern Nazarene College in Quincy. She is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, and she has served in small rural churches here and out in the Midwest in Missouri. Her poems have appeared in small presses such as Threepenny Review, Eclipse, Midwest Quarterly, Witness, South Dakota Review, Natural Bridge, and Poetry East. New poems are coming out in Rhino, Blackbird, and Crannog, a publication based in Galway, Ireland. And she is now looking for a home for Sail Away the Plenty, a full-length collection of poems about the Irish famine and its imprint on spirit, body, and mind. Welcome to the Writer's Block again, Kate McCann.
Thank you, John.
You've been very busy.
I have.
You have also, I believe, a degree in social work.
I do. I have a master's in counseling.
Master's in counseling on top of these other.
Yes. I think back in 85, from Suffolk University.
So you have an alphabet after your name, Kate McCann.
It could be a good thing, or it could.
MFW.
Right.
And what is the degree, the divinity degree? Is that
It's an MDiv.
MDiv?
Master of Divinity.
Master of Divinity. I may have asked you this before. If you had to rank social work, ministry, poetry, tennis, I know you're a former tennis star, where would poetry be?
Poetry's at the top.
At the top.
Poetry is my vocation. When I went to seminary, I have served a couple of small churches, but I didn't really think I was headed toward that. I've been kind of what I call a floater in religion. I was raised Catholic, Unitarian. United Church of Christ was the seminary affiliation where I went in Missouri, but I expected to have a counseling ministry, an addiction ministry. I'm in recovery myself. I'm March it'll be 35 years in AA, and I thought that I would have kind of like a counseling service within a church, but there's really not a lot of that. And though there were elements of church life that were a lot of fun, I love the visits and seeing people and all of that, but week to week preaching and carrying the net as a minister is really not my first vocation. It's poetry.
That style of ministry.
Right.
I've had other people respond to this question. Do poetry and religion fuse in their perceptions or emotions?
Well, it's interesting, John, that you say that, because lately I've been reading a lot of books. You know, I work at a Christian college, so you go over to the library and bam, I mean, it's a very good library, but you certainly, have a lot to choose from as far as theology. But I love to look in that area and read in that area, kind of a crossover. Interestingly enough, one of the poets that I love, Mary Oliver, years ago, I've admired her for years, and I always thought she was a Buddhist. I thought, oh, she sounds like a Buddhist. She, go out every day and love the world, and then I read one of her later books that was very talking about God and the Lord, and it really sort of threw me for a loop. I thought, well, wait a minute, because I had Mary Oliver sort of like I knew where she sat, which isn't true at all. I mean, she basically is a floater as well, and a poet. But I do love to look where they cross over, theology and religion and spirituality.
It often seems to me that there are similar reactions to the world, and depending on what vocabulary is available to the person who's perceiving the world, it's defined as poetic or religious or something else.
Yeah.
I want to hold up the book that you are here to read from and talk about. This is Barn Sour, and this came out in 2013.
Right.
And I want to ask you first where we can buy this, where our listeners, our viewers can get this.
You can get it on Amazon, and it's in the local bookstores around Boston, but you can also go right on the site. Cherry Grove Press is an imprint of Word Tech Books, and that's the publishing house.
That's a wonderful, kind of fascinating name. Can you tell us where you got that title, and then about the poem?
Sure. When I was I moved to Missouri from my MFA in poetry, and then in 1990.
I forgot to mention you have an MFA on top of the Master's in
right,
Social Work
right.
and the Master's in Divinity and a couple others. So you have an MFA in poetry as well.
Right, right. But I took a position as a half-time minister at a little town out there, Ellsbury, Missouri, an hour out of St. Louis. And a woman who had horses one day was describing somebody in church, and she said, oh, he's like a horse. He's kind of barn sour. And I thought, I loved it. And being, you know what it's like as a poet, I thought, I'm loving that. I don't know what it means, but I love the sound of that. And anyway, she ended up telling me it's a horse that never wants to be on the trail, is always looking back, kind of skitterish or longing to return home, really. And that's why I dedicated this book to my mother and father, and it's a lot of growing up, and it's a lot of old experiences, and it's looking back. And I thought, I always knew I'd use it for a poem title, but then, and it's been many years now, a good 10 years, 12 years, and when I was getting thinking of in terms of a book, I thought, that would be a nice title. And I had to try it out on people. It sounds kind of rough, I know, like barn sour. You don't cozy up to that.
Well, it is, as you say, just the kind of name you think, oh, I got to write that down.
I know, and that's what I did. So I got it first. You can't use it.
I won't use it. Would you read the title poem for us?
Sure.
And talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. Would you like me to read it and then talk about it, or do you?
You can do a little intro and then read it.
Sure. Well, again, it's all reflecting, looking back, and my father. It's dedicated. It's in memory of my father, and my father's been dead about 12 years now. He died of a heart attack, and he was a shift worker. He worked at the Edison. He was a blue-collar guy. And when I was a little girl, I didn't, he a lot of times he'd go back and he'd work a double, and I didn't appreciate it. I didn't know anything about that, my father's. And I wanted to get the feeling in that he you know, I have the line in here about fathers doing a double, but just about his presence. He was a quiet guy, but he was often not home because he had to work.
Doing a double has a little more meaning when you're
Well,
than
yeah, that's
when
in
you're
our
an
family
adult
too.
and you're working.
Well, there's that too, but
No, I
maybe-
mean, 16 hours straight.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that-
turning around or coming home, sleeping, working 7 to 3, sleeping, and then going back for the late night. But usually it was staying and working the double, yeah, overtime.
brutal.
Yeah. So, Bonsauer. Remember the old Saturday morning westerns? A dozen from Dunkin' Donuts and 3 pajamaed kids holding down time. You could poke a hole through the sagging brown weave beneath the TV screen, but we never did. Only allowed our fingers to come away fresh with RCA's silver stuck to them. Extract all shoot 'em up, yip-yipping loud, too long cowboy slinging bluff / bravado. And what are you left with? It's what we left that rings in our ear. An old-fashioned living room, modest but ample. A child's holster on the arm of the couch. Outfitted cowgirl beaming. On the back porch, a mother and her mother talk with a friend. Fathers doing a double. The apple trees, bent with fruit, are thriving. Somewhere, a horse balks, resists its rider, fights to turn back. Barnsauer, my friend who knows them terms it, poor beasts who strain, who so ache.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Can we identify the poor beast as you or your father?
Well, it's funny, I did a reading at school last year for the Poetry Month, and a woman in the audience said, I think it's everybody. And we were having a little back and forth at the end of the reading. And I said, you know, you're right. It's me, it's my dad, it's the horses. I've always had that. I mean, I have the Irish, the little streak of the Irish, you know, looking back and history and a little bit of that melancholy about time passing. So I think it can be, you know, I mean, there are people not like that at all, but there are certainly a lot of people. It's definitely me, and it's definitely my father. And
So you're open to that sort of open interpretation of your work. If someone says, I get this out of it, and you say, well, you can understand how that happens, or do you say, no?
no, I hate that. I knew when I was a little girl that I wanted to be a writer. But in high school, we had a couple of teachers who would stand up and say, well, today we're reading Frost or, you know, Cummings. And there was only one way to get it right. And I hated that. And I really didn't care for the poetry either. A lot of times I'd read it and I'd say, and I love Frost today, I love him. But I'd read it and I'd say, what's up with that? And because there was a right way and a wrong way to enter the poem, and I don't feel that way.
I agree with you. I find myself in a bind sometimes when I'm teaching. If somebody's reading Road Not Taken, a Frost poem, and they say, well, this is really about automobiles. You say, well, wait, you know, I'm not sure it's about automobiles. And they say, well, that's the way I feel.
Yeah,
You know?
I know.
And you have to kind of bring them back a little gently. Do you run into that?
Oh, yes. The automobile hasn't come up yet but everything in the world, the kitchen sink, throw in anything. Stopping by Woods, it's all about, you know, Frost had a lot of depression in his life. He had a lot of hard things in the family. But when it goes down, it's got to be about death. He was thinking about death. And, you know, it's
You're Irish. Everything's
but
about
it's a
death.
beautiful poem. Just stopping there. It could be. You could say, yeah, it's, you know, because he repeats it at the end. But and the students, you know how when you teach, you have to be open. You don't want to say, are you crazy? How did you see a car in that?
That's a very interesting comment.
There's the
Let's talk
road.
about that.
Yeah. You have to turn it around.
Yeah. I want to ask, because I think our audience is always interested in some technical points. Do you write every day? And how much do you revise a poem on average?
Well, years ago, I was very obsessive about, I tried to write, I believed, write every day, and it's so important, and that's how you'll get better, and kept track of my writing, had little journals and everything. And I don't know where that really stopped, maybe through the years, because it's been probably 40, 45 years since I've been writing poetry. And I just, well, two things. Teaching, I can't do that. It's busy. Like right now, we're coming up on Thanksgiving and then the Christmas break. It's so busy at school that the students all call it crunch time. But I write a lot in the summer.
So you don't write every day?
No.
You don't have an opportunity to write every day?
No, I don't. But I do. Revising is really important, and during the school year, I can do a lot of revising. But if a poem is trying to get out, I can always sort of feel it. My head feels sort of fuzzy, or it's there. It's an idea, and I will put time aside. I'll make the time. But other than that, no, I don't write every day.
Could you pick another poem from the book and read it for us?
Sure. I will read. Well, you've mentioned. I'll read the After a Nap.
Okay. What? Oh,
That's on.
I mentioned that
Yeah,
recently to you.
Yeah.
What page is that on, please?
That's on 32. After a nap. Once more the world a canvas, anchored by fresh stamina. The dog will get a bath, the vase flowers from the evening walk, in due time. Now the familiar floats back, a sweater's sleeve grazing the floor, the cherished bookcase with its stubborn nicks, photographs, their long sweep, people, pets, the past. Tempered hook, our disquiet but faithful past. Who among us has such forbearance? We turn from our blurry brink to hope this day's hinge will hold.
That's a nice way to wake up. Do you wake up like that from a nap all the time?
No, I wish I did. But
I love the idea of being anchored by stamina. What a wonderful line that is. And I recognize the waking up. This is a very optimistic poem, very positive poem.
Yeah.
Yet when I asked you if you woke up that way from naps, you laughed. You said
Well,
no. So how did you turn the experience around?
Well, I originally, this was a poem where, and it had a couple of different titles, but I don't remember now. I could look back in my notes and see what I had originally. But this one, I landed with this one and I like it. But I wanted to write a poem that talked about the day's hinge, because I thought for a long time that I wanted a collection called A Hinge No Hand Can Hold. And I loved the sound of it. But then my friends were, well, what? Basically, they said, what the hell does that mean? So they, and I thought about it and I said, well, what does that mean? I just like the sound of it. So I just kept fiddling and got the day's hinge in there. And then slowly, the other images, thinking about people and thinking about that I've been lucky. I have wonderful friends in my life and people I've known for years, and I just wanted to get that feeling in there. And pets that have gone,
Can you choose a pet poem for us?
I actually even took the liberty of bringing, I have your book, Marrowbone Lane, and I'd like you maybe even after to sign it. but I was wondering if I could take the liberty and read Adult Dog and then go back to mine, or is that a little out of character?
Sure, if you want.
I
I don't know that anybody's done it, but
I love this poem. I love-
we're talking about Barn Sour.
well,
Kate McCann's book, she's been reading from it. I want to make sure our viewers see the cover so you recognize it when you race to Amazon to get it afterwards.
yeah. I just want to read this because poets, I mean, when I met John at Breadloaf in '75, and I was knocked over at how great, and I love this poem. Adult Dog. A decade ago, she'd say hello with a leap, bolt for the door, chase the neighbor's cat, chase the neighbor's. Now, never, or only the refrigerator door. 3 turns, adagio, collapsing at last in her own corner, bowl and blanket, old bones like a pale, dismantled moon. The sofa's wonderfully warm. She winks. We're a conspiracy. Age is the caper.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered. I didn't know you were going to do that. And I hadn't looked at that poem in a long time. I feel really touched by memories of my 2 dogs
Yeah,
that I had as an adult. And I know that you've had dogs all your life. I just got from Dick, was that 5 minutes? Was that the 5-minute signal, Dick? No. It was not? 10,
10
okay.
minutes, okay.
We got scads of time.
Okay.
Could you pick another poem, Kate?
I will, and I will pick a dog poem, but I just want to say the reason I did that, I was realizing, well, can you do that? I thought about it writing up. But I think when you're a poet and you love, okay, some people are sitting at the top. W.S. Merwin, Jane Hirshfield, I bow down. I love Jane Hirshfield. But then I know so many wonderful poets. I meet with 2 poets regularly down on the South Shore. And I thought, and I write around during the week, and I think of lines. I think of that poem, because this dog, I'm going to read this poem about this dog. Well, actually, I'm going to read this poem about a dog. He's already gone, but I have 2 housemates, and I'm living with a dog that's 14 and is heading toward the end, although my best friend thinks he's going to be the one dog that defies death. So anyway, I see it coming, and I do. I love dogs. So this is called Settling In. Summer dismantled.
Oh, I'm sorry. What page is that?
It's on 84. My 2 friends, they always pick big guys, big dogs. These dogs are huge. Benson was part Walker Coonhound. He was huge, black and white. Settling in. Summer dismantled, cottage shuttered, and the old dog sleeps on, oblivious to sea air, a mower at the window. Labor Day's pack-up business. No pain with his head in a square of sun, legs that take him anywhere in slumber. Sleep, Benson. Sleep so long you wake as wind, snapping the rose hips back.
Very nice, very touching. When did Benson pass away?
Benson, I didn't know Benson all that well because at the time they had Benson, I was living in Missouri. But in the summer, I was down at my friend's. She's got a little trailer in an old park down on the water in Marshfield. And Ben was there that summer. And she has a beautiful rosehip bush that covers the front of the little old trailer. It's a cool place.
I've got to ask you, as a poet and as a minister, do dogs go to heaven?
Dogs go to heaven.
Good.
I just want to tell you, I had a young woman, always nervous about everything, came in one day, Reverend Kate, I just want to know, do dogs go to heaven? And I thought, of course they go to heaven. Yeah.
Good. Did that calm her down?
It calmed her down.
Good. I'm looking forward to seeing my dog.
Me too.
I just got from Dick, the camera person this evening, the 5-minute signal. So I'm going to ask you if you would read one more quick poem, and then I want to do some more showing of the book.
Okay. Let's see. I'll read a short little poem that I wrote when I was in Ireland.
What page are we at?
It's on page 96.
96?
96, yeah. I was staying with a friend, a photographer, who took me all around, and it was a ball, and showed me all these places. And there's this little town, it's called the Wall Clohan. I didn't even think we were anywhere. There was nothing in this town, and she said, "This is Clohan. We're in Clohan," which had a fallen down farm, and that seemed to be it. And it fascinated me. Over the lichen's white dabs, the velvet press of moss, a spray of grass fans out. How long has it seeded and prospered there, like an old broom's stray strands, part and parcel of the fallen down farm, holding out a lament for all that was, the hand extended for its glove, long lost.
Ghosts.
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 They're
Thank
real.
you. Thank you very much for reading that. Thank you for driving all the way up from Quincy. The book again is Barn Sour, and I want to read part of a blurb. Kate takes on nature as real prizes in this book. She observes and sees both and finds the absolute proper diction to put us in her head. I have the sense that McCann lets nature say what it means or what it wants to say, and that she is a Vatici, nature's enabler. This is a wonderful book. I want to thank you for coming up and sharing it with us, and hope that our viewers out there can partake.
Great. Thank you for asking me.
I want to thank, as well as thanking Kate, I want to thank all our viewers in television land for being with us on the Writer's Block. As I mentioned before, this is our 24th year, and this show happens to have been the 288th in our now lengthy history. And I know that you have watched every one. I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.